Welcome to another cast on tealtownusa.com. In this episode, Kelsey sits down with Bradley from St. Louis Game Time to discuss the upcoming Western Conference Final between the St. Louis Blues and your San Jose Sharks.
Okay, so we are here today with Brad from GT, and he's just going to kind of give us a little rundown headed into the St. Louis Blues series. So if you just kind of want to introduce yourself, kind of give us a little rundown of what you do, and we'll get started from there.
Sure. Hi, I'm Brad Lee with St. Louis Game Time. We're kind of weird, so we are a blog and a website at stlouisgametime.com, but we started as a fan-run program / paper publication that's a 24-year tradition outside every Blues home game. I've been running the publication for, this is the 7th season that I've been the publisher, and I wrote for it since 2005. So it's we're weird. It's a niche thing, but there really has only been one other fan-run program in all of the NHL. In Chicago, they had one for a while called the Committed Indian, and before that, it was called the Blue Line Report. So I've been involved with the website since 2006 and the paper since 2005, and we're fans doing the stuff. So it's it's the weirdest hobby ever. I'll admit it.
Oh, so that's okay. That's kind of how Tealtown is too. We're just fans doing the stuff. So, one of my points that I have here today is the San Jose Sharks heading in have the top 3 points producers in the playoffs, with Couture, Hurdle, and Burns all having 14 points apiece, where you guys have Schwartz, Pietrangelo, and O'Reilly that have 11 and 9. What kind of matchups are you looking forward to seeing between the two teams?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see if they go back to what the forward line combinations are. Going into the playoffs, they had Ryan O'Reilly between usually Braden Shen and Vladimir Tarasenko. The top line guys were not producing. Shen, O'Reilly, and Tarasenko, none of them really were doing that well. I think Tarasenko has, 4 power play goals. Yeah, four power play goals. He has 5 in the playoffs. He has no assists. So it's been a little bit interesting. Ryan O'Reilly has 9 points, 2 goals, 7 assists. But he really, the last game against Dallas in Game 7, they were not sending him out for the majority of the offensive zone faceoffs. For the playoffs, his faceoff percentage is under 48%, and this is a guy who led the league in faceoff percentage, I think 2 years ago, and is usually in the top 5 in faceoff percentage. So I think he might have some sort of injury. So really, what they've done is they've gone back to an old combination where they had Schwartz, Shen, and Tarasenko. And then O'Reilly has been playing with a patchwork of David Perron. And then for a while it was Robbie Fabry. And then Fabry came out. And in the last 2 games, it was Sammy Blais. So really, the third line has been the impact line for the Blues, with Tyler Bozak, Robert Thomas, and Pat Maroon, who scored the game winner in double overtime in Game 7 against Dallas. So it will be really interesting to see if they go with how they finish the last round, or if they say, okay, a couple days off, maybe a few guys have healed up a little bit, maybe O'Reilly's feeling a little bit better, and they try to go back to where they were at the beginning of the playoffs. I don't know. Craig Berube is a little bit of a if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of guy. So I kind of think they'll roll with what they had. But I mean, the most important player probably in the playoffs so far for the Blues has been Jordan Binnington. And while his numbers haven't been, out of this world, he's got a 2.39 goals against average. He saved about 91.5% of the shots he's faced. Those aren't great. But, he's got 8 wins and 5 losses. So they've advanced, here to the third round on his shoulders. And really, his kind of calming presence has been such a huge impact on the Blues and really gotten them this far.
Jones and Bennington are two obviously completely different goalies. However, their numbers in the playoffs are relatively the same. Jones is at a 9.1 and a 2.72 goals against. However, those first, the games 2, 3, and 4 of the Vegas series really kind of screwed him up on that save percentage and goals against in that aspect. Do you think that the game 7, even though that you guys did have the Blues had an extra day off heading into this series, do you think that the game 7 going into double overtime is going to affect how game 1 goes?
I would hope not, but you never know. It's, like I said, O'Reilly was definitely dinged up. David Perron had kind of had his ups and downs in the last round. I don't know if he's dealing with any injuries. O'Reilly not taking a lot of faceoffs and being pretty ineffective and being held off the score sheet for the majority of the Stars series really is troubling to me. But as far as the impact of that game 7 going to double overtime, and it was I think 5.5 minutes into the second overtime, so they basically played about an extra period in about 5 minutes. So I would hope from Wednesday to Saturday that's not a huge issue, but they did go to 6 games against Winnipeg. I got a little time off before the second round started. So, they've had a little bit of a break here and there. The travel between St. Louis and San Jose is definitely a little bit of a concern as the series goes on, if it goes to 6 or 7 games. A couple years ago in 2016 in the Western Conference Final when these two teams met, the Blues really looked good at about game 4 or 5. And then I think the fact that the first 2 series went 7 games and then the amount of travel to get back and forth between St. Louis and San Jose, at the end of that series, they were gassed. So, yeah, it's always a concern, but I think they'll be okay. It just depends on how long this series goes. And, I think if you look at the ages of both teams, I think the Blues might be a slightly younger team. So maybe travel and length of series might go a little bit in their favor and might affect the Sharks more. And, it's not like the Sharks haven't played a lot of games in the playoffs too,
Right. We've played 14 and you guys have played
13,
if I could, do basic math. So heading into the series this year, the season series went 2-1. The Sharks won both the games at home. Do you think that the Sharks having a home ice advantage through the series is going to potentially affect the outcome of that, considering what the season series landed at?
That's true. And I think the last game was I think it was in March. It was in the last month of the season, last 5-6 weeks of the season. So, but the thing to remember about that game is that was one of the last times that Jake Allen was starting in net for the Blues. And at that time he was playing about every 2 out of every 8 games, I think, somewhere around there. So, it might be a little bit hard to judge how the Blues are going to match up based on the regular season because they had such a difference. The first 3 months of the season, they were so bad. They were tied with the Senators for the fewest points in the league on January 3rd. And Jordan Binnington started in Philadelphia on January 7th, but then really didn't become the starter until the beginning of February after the All-Star break. And they really became such a different team when he was installed as the starter. So it's kind of hard to, I think, make a comparison. The Jets played the Blues really well in the regular season, but they didn't face Jordan Binnington. And the Stars actually beat Jordan Binnington at least once, if not twice. I think they beat him twice in the second half of the season, and you see what happens. So I think it's kind of hard to say what kind of impact the regular season has. Home ice advantage, the Blues won all 3 road games in Winnipeg, and they won twice in Dallas. So they have 5 road wins in 2 series. That's going to be really, really, really hard to replicate in the third round, but I don't think they're really afraid about playing on the road, though. So it's, if they can take one of these first 2 games in San Jose, Saturday and Monday, come back to St. Louis and see what happens. But I think that's going to be their goal, is to try to get one of those 2 games if they can.
So Bennington has obviously brought in some huge impact on St. Louis this season. Regular season, his numbers are 1.89 and 9.27 save percentage. But I haven't really seen him play a whole lot. I was a little busy watching the Vegas series, obviously my last series. So can you just give us a rundown on Bennington and what he has done for you, and kind of what his strengths and weaknesses are?
Sure. So he has an interesting story. He's been in the system for about 7 years. He's a 25-year-old rookie. He had been called up 3 years ago as an emergency replacement and just sat on the bench for a couple games and then went back down to the minors. Last year, he was actually loaned out to Providence in the AHL as a backup because he was asked to go down to the ECHL last year, and he refused. He said, I'm better than that. I'm not an ECHL goalie. I'm at least an AHL goalie, and I think I could compete for an NHL spot if you give me the chance. So they actually found a way for him to go to the Bruins AHL affiliate in Providence, and was the backup there last year. At certain points, he was either 4th or 5th in the organizational depth chart this season. When they had some injuries and the Blues had Chad Johnson as their backup. He did really poorly. He went to Anaheim as an injury replacement when Ryan Miller got hurt and Gibson needed a backup. For a little while, they called up a kid named Evan Fitzpatrick, who sat on the bench for a while. And they probably would have called up Ville Husso, who was supposed to be the goalie of the future down in the minors. So 2 other guys were probably considered before Bennington. And then they had 2 other guys up here at the NHL level. So he literally was 5th. So then they get rid of Chad Johnson. Husso gets off to a horrible start in San Antonio. Bennington came in and played really well. And he was super feisty. There was one game where he basically challenged the Dallas Stars affiliate, the Texas Stars, basically to a fight, and tried to get into a fight with 2 different guys in the ice during a game in AHL this season. So he is definitely feisty, and he is not afraid to defend his crease. So if guys are coming in, he'll put the blocker out, he'll put the glove out and kind of push a little bit, and he'll fight for space. So just in talking about his style of play, he tries to project calmness, coolness in anything. Post-game interviews, when he's in warm-ups, during the game, he tries to keep his emotions in control. And so I would say that his best attribute is his preparation before the shot. He's really good at getting square. He knows where he is all times in the crease and knows where the puck is. He's a big guy. I wouldn't say he's the fastest with lateral movement. He is probably less agile than Jake Allen, but he is better prepared and hangs in there. And I think there's definitely a little bit of a conservation of movement on his part, that when he gets settled and gets in there, he's not kind of making small adjustments. He gets set in that place and basically says, look, here I am. You got to go around me. And really has played strong that way. When Dallas got to him, there were a couple times where the Blues let the Stars carry the puck into the offensive zone with speed from the neutral zone. They didn't stand up at the blue line, and any time that the Stars really carried speed into their offensive zone, they were hard to contain. And Bennington got caught going side to side a couple times on some of those kind of 3-on-2 or 3-on-3, where it kind of like a fast break in basketball, and they go down there and pass the puck a couple times, and Bennington kind of got moved left to right a little bit, and he didn't look as good. So as long as the Blues can, I think their strategy is try to stand the other team up at the blue line, make them kind of set up that in the offensive zone and kind of run some set plays and things. And he's really comfortable at seeing where the puck is and anticipating.
Also headed into that, special teams, it seems to going into it, St. Louis has quite a disadvantage. Their penalty kill is only at 75% in the playoffs, where San Jose is at 80.8. And San Jose is really good about drawing penalties. how do you see St. Louis kind of stepping it up and being able to hold off making special teams such a factor in this series?
The Blues have been lethal at 5-on-5. When they kept the game at 5-on-5 against Winnipeg in the first round, they were the better team. When they kept the game at 5-on-5 against Dallas, they were the better team, and that's how they won. When they took stupid penalties, when they got goaded into retaliating and it went 4-on-4, they were at a distinct disadvantage. And they might have younger players at some positions, but no one is ever going to call the Blues a fast team. So if you're really trying to have to kill a lot of penalties, their power play has not been that good. They really got stymied by the really aggressive penalty killing by Dallas in the last round. Special teams are kind of a mess on both sides for the Blues, which could be a bad thing. But, the further you get in the playoffs, the fewer power plays the referees hand out. So that might be a smaller factor moving forward, but it definitely, when it pops up, when it crops up, it's going to be an issue for the Blues for sure. I think they can kill penalties better. I mean, Winnipeg is so good on the power play, and Dallas could be so good on the power play. It's a little bit of the opponent was really good, and the numbers probably illustrate that. But it also shows that the Blues really want to stay 5-on-5 as much as possible.
Okay, and then just kind of some unexpected depth that you see from the Blues. Who are you expecting to step up that maybe most people would kind of throw to the curve?
Well, if you watched any of the last series, NBC SN really started to get on the Robert Thomas hype train. So he's 19 years old. First season in the NHL, he was with the Hamilton Bulldogs last year, and they won the Memorial Cup, and he won the Wayne Gretzky 99 award in the Memorial Cup last year. He could have gone back to juniors for one more year, and they kind of slow played it where he would play a game and sit a game at the beginning of the season because you can play those first 9 games and still go back to junior. And he showed enough to stick with the team, but he was still kept at either a third or fourth line role most of the season. And you could still say he's on the third line, even though it's the line that's been producing and most dangerous. He is super skilled with the puck. He can carry it through traffic. He creates, in fact, the game-winning goal in Game 7 in double overtime. The Blues won the face-off. He curled around with the puck, created some space, shot the puck off the post. It hit Ben Bishop, the Stars goalie, in the back of the head, landed in the crease, and then Patrick Maroon basically reached over Ben Bishop where he didn't know where the puck was and just slid it into the goal for the game winner. That was all created by Robert Thomas. So if you haven't been able to see him, number 18, he's going to be interesting to watch, and he could be a star in the making. On defense, Vince Dunn is in his second year, number 29. He is a little bit smaller defender, definitely more of an offensive-minded guy on the blue line. Has had some adventures with the puck in his own end. And I think you could say that with several of the Blues defenders. Alex Pietrangelo, Colton Parayko, Joel Edmondson, Robert Bortuzzo, Jay Bouwmeester, Carl Gunnarsson. I mean, all of them have had some adventures with the puck and decision-making. But when Dunn is quarterbacking the power play, or when he's kind of headmanning the puck up through the neutral zone, he's shifty, and he has really good vision and anticipation on where the puck needs to go. And they have trusted him with more and more minutes in those kinds of situations. Now, late in a period or late in a game when they're trying to defend the lead, he probably is going to be stuck to the bench a little bit. But Vince Dunn is definitely a guy that if he can round out his game a little more in his own end, he could be a borderline all-star in a year or two, just based on his offensive presence and state of mind and his skills on that end. So watch for him, number 29.
And then last a little bit, what is your prediction headed forward? We have to.
I know. I gotta tell you, the Sharks. There's some history there. I think the Sharks and Blues have played in the playoffs 6 times since 2000. I think so. In 20 years,
that's correct.
Yeah, 19 years they played 6 times. And there were some years the Blues weren't making the playoffs there, so or they were just kept losing in the first round to opponents, so they didn't get a chance to meet them more often. So there've been a couple of times where the Blues got their number. I think there are a lot of fans in St. Louis who think there's unfinished business based on the last time they played in the conference final in 2016. And really, if you look at the two rosters, the Sharks have a lot of the same guys. They might be playing a different position. Hertl is definitely, I think he was a third line guy a couple of years ago, and now he's, challenging for the lead in the point scoring in the playoffs. So, they might be in a little bit different position, but it's mostly the same guys. With the Blues, they've really rolled over. Brian Elliott was the goaltender. David Backes was the captain. Alex Dean was probably playing first or second line minutes, and he's on the fourth line now. Robert Thomas was probably in junior high, so or early in high school. So it's a little different face. So that kind of gives me some hope that it's not going to be the same thing as it was a couple years ago. But if the Blues have shown anything, is that they like playing on the road. They can make stupid mistakes at home. They're not great on special teams, so if they lose their cool, they could lose a game that way with giving up too many power play goals. And they've played a lot of games. They've played 13 of a possible 14 games, so it's probably going to go 6 or 7, and then it's kind of all bets are off. I am cautiously optimistic, and here's why. The Blues have been around since 1967, and they've never won a Stanley Cup. They haven't been in the Stanley Cup final since 1970. 1970. I'm in my 40s, and I wasn't born yet the last time the Blues were in the Stanley Cup final. They've never actually won a game. They've been in the final 3 times. They've never won a game in the Stanley Cup final. So, they started the year off. They look like strangers playing a pickup game in a rec league on a Saturday night, on a Friday night, playing at 9:00 after they've had 4 or 5 beers. That's how bad the first 3 months of the season were. A year ago, they got off to the best start ever, and they missed the playoffs by a point. So it's been upside down as far as expectations and performance. So as a Blues fan, I should say that I don't have an expectation that they're going to make the Stanley Cup final because they haven't in my lifetime. But like I said, this season where expectations have been turned upside down. So I kind of think they might win. It's going to be nerve-wracking as hell. And it's going to be, if you're not a Sharks fan or a Blues fan, it'll probably be a lot more fun than if you're a Sharks fan or Blues fan. Because it's going to be one of those series, I think. But I have hope, but that hope could go out in one game. So, as I was listening to Puck Soup, Greg Wyshynski from ESPN, they mentioned the Blues and Stars in Game 7, and Down Goes Brown said something about the Blues being that he thought the Blues would win in the conference final, and he said dozens and dozens of Blues fans spoke up and said, no, don't jinx us, and Wyshynski out of the blue said, the Blues fan base is kind of underrated as far as being tortured and neurotic and unhinged a little bit. So I think all of those qualities probably will come out during this series.
Well, I think it's going to be a long series. I think we'll probably go 6 or 7. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can handle another Game 7. I've already done 2. But thanks for coming on and talking with me. Do you have any last-minute thoughts?
Yeah, check us out on Twitter. We're at ST Lewis Game Time. Our Twitter name though right now is do. I don't know what that could be from. Maybe a certain song. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, check us out on Twitter. We're stlewisgametime.com on the website. And if any of your listeners are in St. Louis for any of the games here, at Enterprise Center. So our fan run paper, so we have 24 pages every issue, all about that night's action. Every issue is new for each game, so we'll have plenty of reaction after game 1 and game 2 for the first home game here, game 3 in St. Louis. So any of your listeners are in St. Louis, check us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and you have a good rest of your night.
All right. Hey, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to another cast from tealtownusa.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we provide Teal Town After Dark following every single San Jose Sharks game, home and away, regular season, and playoffs. And don't forget to listen to our weekly wrap-up show, The Pucknologists. Thanks for listening.